where I also had a center which incubates innovation and entrepreneurship. So today I would share my understanding of what is called the business model canvas and value proposition design methods with you in this faculty development program. And essentially, where my understanding is coming from is uh, through my engagement with young people who are often struggling to shape their ideas into some kind of business plans. At our Center of Incubation and Entrepreneurship, we guide a lot of young individuals who have initial ideas and they want to translate those ideas into business plans, and very often they are struggling and feel challenged in terms of how do you do it. And I found uh, in the course of things and course of time that the business model canvas tool is a very effective method which can probably help anybody to visualize their ideas further. And that's what I intend to share with you today. Now, I don't know how many of you may actually already be familiar with the business model canvas tool, but for your information, this is a tool that has been designed by Alexander Osterwelder, who has also written many books about the subject. There is a book called Business Model Generation, and there is another book called Value Proposition Design. And similarly, there are several other books which are very, very helpful in this area. And I would really urge you to pick these books up, especially if you are also a teacher and you are associated with business management, entrepreneurship, and helping young people uh, with taking their ideas forward. So, before we get into the details of the business model canvas, I would like to also tell you a little bit about why this becomes an effective tool. And for that, if I may share this example with you, which is basically a visual having some text. The text describes what the visual is, and the difference between the text and the visual is that, as you understand, language is always very, very linear, which means that if I read the sentence that a ball bounced thrice over the rocks and fell into water with a splash, you will have to wait till I complete this sentence to be able to understand what exactly is being said here. Whereas if you look at the visual, you can grasp the meaning in one go. So a visual language is much more effective, and similarly, a business model tool being visual is similarly effective that way, because it gives you a chance to look at the whole in one go and not really go through a linear process where you start somewhere and you have to wait till the end to be able to comprehend the meaning of whatever is being said, communicated, or told. Also, the uh, advantage of having a visual language is that people can participate. So if you are working in a team and if you want people to understand your ideas well and clearly and also contribute towards those ideas, then a visual language is much better than a textual or verbal language. There is an interesting book written by Dan Rom, blah blah blah. And if you can actually get this book and read it, it's very, very interesting. Where it tells you how do you combine your verbal communication together with visual communication so that you can make it effective. And as I understand that most of us are involved with the business of communication because most of us are teachers, and that's what our job is to be able to communicate ideas well. And in that regard, I think these kind of uh, ideas are very, very helpful. So now if we come back to the business model canvas, the business model canvas has got these primary blocks, and these can be considered as essential blocks which will, if put together, form a business framework. At the center of it is what is called a value proposition, and I'm sure that if you are associated with business management, marketing, entrepreneurship, you understand well what is the meaning of value proposition. Value proposition is something that we intend to offer to somebody to whom it is useful. So the business model canvas has got two sides. One side is about the customer, and the other side is about, which is the left hand side, about how do you actually prepare and make and build that value proposition. So value proposition is in the center, which is the main purpose of a business, that it has something to offer. And on the right hand side is what is a customer segment. That is basically for whom that value is intended for. On the left hand side, there are key resources and key activities which tells you that to be able to make that value proposition, what is that which you need and what is that which you need to do. So as resources, what is that which you require? It could be raw material, it could be infrastructure, it could be your skills, talents, abilities, capabilities. And then what do you need to do? The work which you need to put in to be able to convert that resource or material that you have to be able to create your value proposition. And again, coming back to the right hand side, channels and relationship. Channels are means by which you deliver that value proposition to your end customer, and customer relationships are the means by which your customers get to know about you, understand you, and build some kind of a relationship. And the character of that relationship or what it needs to be, something like that, when you're doing an online business, then that relationship is very abstract and virtual. While if you're dealing with a service or a product that is either very personal, like say for example a barber's shop, where you need to have a personal relationship, or if you're selling a very, very expensive product like Mercedes Benz, then you need to have a personal relationship with your customers. So basically, this is an essential building block which urges you to think that what kind of relationships you will need to have to be able to keep delivering the value that you intend to deliver to your customer. Then again, on the right hand side bottom are revenue streams, which basically means that to be able to sustain the business, what are the sources and means of income that you will have. On the left hand side, to be able to create that value proposition, what are the essential and main costs that you'll have to incur, whether it will be on people, whether it will be on raw material, whether it will be on operations. So what is that? Where is that where your key expenditures are going to be? And on the extreme left hand side are key partnerships, which means that who are those agencies, individuals, people which are going to help you make your value proposition and finally deliver it to whoever you would like to deliver it to. Now, having said that, what I found is that it is much easier to understand the value proposition if you take it to a personal level rather than start it from a business level. And for that purpose, there is something called a personal business model canvas. Here in the personal business model canvas, I think the whole jargon and the terminology is much more easier to understand, which people can associate to at a more simpler and at a more personal level. So I have always found with my students that to introduce a personal business model canvas is actually very useful, and to make them fill that up in their own way. So while the business model canvas starts from the center, which is the value proposition that you intend to offer, whatever that may be a good or a service. The personal business model canvas starts from your key resources, which is what you have as an individual. So, as an individual, do you have certain qualifications? Do you have certain skills? Do you have certain strengths and capabilities that you can do? And it goes on to what you do, which means having that strength and talent and skill. How do you like to put it to use? So, if you are an athletic person and that's your strength, how would you like to, or how do you wish to, or how do you enjoy putting it to actually some kind of a use? You may like to go to the gym and exercise. You may like to actually go for a long run. That's how you enjoy it. You may like to use that athletic skill that you have, an ability that you have in training somebody else. So basically, starting from your key resource, which is within you, going to how do you put that resource to use and like to. And here there is nothing intellectual. This is not something about actually thinking about. This is actually being very, very real. And I think it will be a very good idea to try this out with your students and even with yourself and even with probably your family members, with your children, with your siblings, to actually get to understand this whole model and concept much better. Now it says that having a key resource and how you like to put it to use, or how do you enjoy putting it to use, what comes out of it as value. This is slightly tricky and difficult to understand because most often activity or what we do is misunderstood by the value which is an outcome of that activity. So here how it is titled as is how we end up helping somebody else through the resource that we have and what we enjoy doing. So from how you help, you go to who you help. So for example, you may be very good in terms of understanding mathematical concepts. That's your strength. That's your resource. And what you will actually like to do or enjoy doing is actually taking up new mathematical challenges and solving them. Now, can the combination of two become a value and value for somebody else? Yes, I'm sure it can. And this is exactly what teachers would do. They will take up these new challenges and they will help their students to understand these concepts. And that's how your strength is becoming a value for somebody else, and that somebody else is a student here. Now, this model is interestingly explained by someone called Tim Clark. I'll share with you some snapshots of a film which is available on the internet, and you can actually go and see it. If you search for Tim Clark personal business model canvas, you should be able to find it very fast. But let me show you few snapshots to explain the personal business model canvas a little more. So what Tim Clark says is that you start making your personal business model canvas from what you do. And Tim Clark happens to be also a teacher. So he has put down his main activities into the block of what you do. So he teaches, he writes, and he is engaged in community service. Then he says that to be able to understand it a little better, you only stick to the most important activity, and according to him and his profession, it is to teach. The second thing he says what you do is to understand who you are actually helping, and he has got three categories in the block of who he helps: the students who he teaches, the faculty members, and the community which he may engage with time to time. And here also he says that take one or select one which is the most important segment. So he teaches students. And this is where the difference between how you help and what you do actually becomes very clear. His activity is teaching, and the value that comes out of that is how he is helping his students to advance his career. So, probably you can now understand that there is a difference between activity and value proposition. So, what you do and what is the outcome of that as a value to somebody else are two different things, and this is slightly difficult to understand, but with some practice I'm sure you will be able to understand this better. Now, what is the way in which he is able to deliver that value to his students is through classrooms. So he teaches students through classroom and helps them advance their career. So as you can see that this is actually a very effective tool to put down the main essential blocks of a business and to visualize, and to also visualize something not only which is there going to be in the future but something which is existing. Now, how Tim Clark is using this business model canvas is, if he starts thinking that would he like to address another section of people, and here he chooses that what if he wants to help working adults who obviously will not be able to come to the classroom. And those working adults, if they are not able to come to the classroom, the channel he requires to reach out to them and to deliver the same value, which is to help them advance their careers, will happen or could happen through a online kind of a session. But can the same activity which is teaching be appropriate to deliver that value which he intends to deliver? No, because he may have to build material which is online material. So you can see that how this canvas actually helps you visualize an idea better and clearly. So now we come back to the business model canvas once again. I understand that I have not completed the personal business model canvas fully, and that has been deliberate because I felt that at this point of time it is more important that I introduce the concept to you and also take on things which are more difficult and essential to understand and leave the rest to you to probably find your own resources, whether it is literature or internet, and complete that whole journey. And the point which I essentially wanted to make here was that introducing a personal business model canvas is more interesting to younger people before you introduce them to the business model canvas, because somewhere business is something which they are yet to do, whereas in terms of their own strengths, skill, qualifications, talents, and things like that, they find it easier to associate with, and in that context they are able to at least understand the overall model better. And I would urge you to really try this out, either with yourself and with your students, and it works very nicely. Please look up on the internet for more information on the personal business model, and I'm sure that you will be able to fill the gaps which we have deliberately left here. Now, coming back to the business model canvas, I have taken up an example from the solar energy world, and this position that was developed by somebody called Jigar Shah, who felt that the solar energy is a viable alternative in the long run, uh, and compared to non-replenishable resources that we currently are used to, that have also got a very very high cost. But he felt that this is also not a very easy business, though it may sound and look promising at the outset. But as we all understand, that it has got a very high initial cost. If you really want to have solar energy even coming to your home, we all understand that the initial high investment is what stops most of us from using it. Uh, in the long run, we understand that it may be uh, economical for all of us, but the initial costs are so high that we are unable to really make a beginning somewhere and continue to use the electricity which is supplied by the municipality. And he felt that there was an opportunity there, and he tried to this whole thing in an interesting manner. He understood that those commercial organizations that are really high energy intensive and power intensive, places which use, say, for example, cold storages because they need to preserve food, or they are into that kind of a business. They have very very high electricity bills every month, and that cuts their profits in a large manner. But at the same time, he felt that they will not be these commercial organizations would not be in a position to buy it upfront, because the whole infrastructure and the whole system of solar panels and all that takes a lot of money. So he came up with an interesting proposition that what if you don't buy it but get into an agreement with me to purchase electricity which is generated through that solar system, which my company installs for you at your rooftop. And he also understood and took this proposition to organizations which had large terraces and large rooftops, and for them it was easy to install probably these solar systems. So his proposition was that what I'm selling you is energy. I'm not selling you the installation. And he had basically his channel was a sales force, which means he had his group of people who went to these organizations, and that's how he took his proposition to his intended customers. But at the same time, he also knew that somebody will have to bear the cost of installation, and he himself was not really in a position to do that. So, where does he get the capital and the money to actually buy these installations which he can put on his customers' rooftops? So, he thought of another idea. He said that why not make the investors pay for these installations? And why would the investors pay for these installations? Because one, investors having a sum of money are not really worried about immediate returns. They can wait. They can wait for a longer period of time and they are happy with slow returns coming but sufficient returns coming. And another thing that makes this whole offer to investors attractive is the fact that if they invest into green energy, like solar energy, then they get a lot of rebates. They get a lot of exemptions from the government. So it becomes a very interesting business model where, as you can see, that it is away from a conventional thinking. Like, say, for example, many of us who would believe and who will think that solar energy is a good alternative for electricity that we use at our homes. The immediate thing which we will think of is that why don't I sell solar panels and solar devices? So the conventional mindset will always take me to that approach, that you actually think of selling the good. Here, the gentleman has tried to see it from a point of view of offering a service and mobilizing resources, and especially financial resources, in a manner that he doesn't invest his own money and he also doesn't have that money for that matter. So that makes a very interesting proposition, that on one side he has got his customers who would like to use solar energy, and on the other side he has got another set of customers who would like to invest and get returns out of solar energy. And he, through this business model, earns from what he can do well, which is having a task force, and that's his key resource, where he ensures that he is able to find investors, he is able to find his clients, and he is also able to provide them a service where they don't have to worry about maintenance, installation, life, all that kind of a thing. That is his headache and responsibility. So Jigar Shah created a business model in which he was able to earn a livelihood out of an idea without actually making any kind of big investments. You can see that this kind of a framework or a blueprint or a canvas, as it is called, the business model canvas, helps you think of essential ingredients to compose a business idea. And you can try this on with many ideas and anything that you may have in mind, and to see that if you have taken care of all the essential concerns that will be necessary to complete a business plan. Again, I will request you to go to the internet and look at Jigar Shah's business model. There are lots of case studies, and there are lots of literature and material and content that is available on the internet. So please have a look. So now let's come to the value proposition canvas, and as you can see that the value proposition is essentially only a detailed building block which involves the customer segment and the value proposition in the business model canvas itself. Now, what is important to understand here is that most often we get very excited by new ideas. And in our course of, I think, things, we see, especially the young people who are very enthusiastic about new ideas, and most often they are bringing these ideas out of their own imagination without really deeply understanding whether the proposition that they are making is uh, actually solving a problem for their customers. And you will find many examples of this all around you, where people will come up very excited and saying that this is what I would like to do. And this is where we have to actually tell them to hold on and take a step back and really figure out whether the idea that they have has been verified and validated uh, with the target customer who they intend to serve through that value proposition. And the value proposition canvas actually is an additional tool in that regard, that you are able to start from really trying to understand the needs of your customer. And I will explain the value proposition canvas a little more, and also with an example. So the value proposition looks something like this. On the right hand side is what uh, is represented by a circle, and that is the customer profile. On the left hand side is the value map. Now the customer profile has got three aspects. One is customer jobs, and customer jobs are essentially what is that which they are trying to get done, specifically related to the area of your intervention, or where your proposition may lie. Uh, for example, when you get up in the morning, what you're trying to get done is make a cup of tea for yourself. And if you are making a cup of tea for yourself, what you require is probably milk and sugar, and all that has to be readily available to you. And that probably links up to the fact that whether the delivery of milk is happening on time or not. So what you are trying to get done is prepare a cup of tea, and prepare a cup of tea in probably the most convenient way and in the shortest possible time. Also, what they're trying to get done as customers could be sort of organized in three ways. One could be very physical jobs, uh, uh, which are the physical aspects of doing something, and there could also be emotional and social aspects to it, which by which what one means is that emotionally how does one feels, and emotionally what is that which you are trying to achieve at that point of time. So if you are making a cup of tea, then emotionally you are trying to probably find a little peace and time for yourself. And socially, if you see making a cup of tea, if you are probably influenced by a certain promotion of a certain brand or a certain kind of tea, where socially you are trying to influence your own self in terms of standing out in the society because you use a particular brand. Pains are that while getting the work done, do you come through any kind of obstacles? And in both and all categories, three categories: physical, social, and emotional. So if you are trying to get a cup of tea made for yourself, then is the milk being delivered on time, or there is uncertainty about it? The gains are that having done the work, what is that you expect to get out of it? And as I said earlier, that could be that buying a little time for yourself in a busy day, where you have a certain solitude, peace of mind, and you can reflect and plan the day properly. So it is that aspect of actually finding a gain through that activity which you may be engaged in. Now, on the left hand side is the value map, which has got again three things where through your offerings or through your products and services, you address the jobs that the customer is trying to get done, and you find means by which the pains of the customer could actually be addressed, which are um innovative ideas, or which could be options by which you can actually address all those pains. And the gain creators, where by certain again offerings you are able to address uh, the gains which a customer is trying to achieve through that action. Now, what we can do is probably take an example to explain this canvas a little better, and I will move on to a taxi service. And you can imagine that before the taxi services like Ola and Uber came in, what would have been the scenario? So, if somebody was trying to innovate a new model or was trying to look at an opportunity in this area of providing services, taxi services, what would have gone through in terms of really creating the value proposition? And we will take this um, uh, uh, whole thing step by step in terms of understanding each part of the customer profile and the value map. So first, if we move on to the customer profile, there are a couple of things which the customer would be trying to do, and I think many of us will would be familiar with the times that app-based taxi services were not really available, and we had to spend a lot of time finding a taxi if we needed to go to the airport, or in case there was an emergency at home or an office, where we struggled with trying to find a cab service. So in that case, the customer jobs would have included uh, contacting the taxi service, and then later on waiting for the taxi to arrive wherever you are, and then trying to manage how do you really pay for it, whether you pay in cash, do you have the change and things like that. So really worrying about keeping all those things in view, and not really having a relaxed mind. Now, the kind of pains we would have gone through um, uh, is that, first of all, whether there is a taxi available at the taxi service, even if we have a phone number and we want to contact them and call them to wherever we are, we have to book it much in advance, because at the right time you may not find the taxi exactly. You may also bump into a unpleasant or a bad driver, and always there is this worry of not having the exact change and the amount that you have to pay. Very often, also, in places like India, you would have experienced that people were also worried about whether the driver is reliable or not, whether he will go through the shortest possible route, whether he will actually cheat you in some way and try and get more money, and things like that. Those are the pains that we would have encountered while using a taxi service. And in case we look at the gains, really, this is what we would have liked to get out of the taxi service, that you have very little time in which you should be able to pay, zero time on payment. You should also be able to cancel the taxi service in case there was a change of need. You should be able to track your driver while you are waiting for the taxi, and you should also be able to get a trusted driver, really. So this is all explained in customer job, in customer pains, and in customer gains, and you can look at it closely. Now, what I would like to mention here is that there are lots of examples again available on the internet, and I will request you to familiarize yourself with several of these examples. The point here is that many of these things appear very theoretical if we are talking about it and having a conversation. The more you practice these things and bring it into your work by taking up small examples and everyday life examples, you would be able to understand it much better and actually use it in whatever capacity, whether it is teaching or whether it is doing a professional consultancy work. And these models are very, very helpful in terms of really thinking about and visualizing a value proposition, and also communicating the idea effectively to others and sharing your thoughts. So now the uh, the exercise here, or the task here, is that once we have figured out what are the jobs of customers, what are the pains, and what are the gains, you try and prioritize them. Because what are the, for example, what are the most important and least important jobs, what are the most uh, uh, painful things and least painful things, what would you really like to have as a gain, and what doesn't so much matter to you. So once you have, and how is this done is by actually interacting with your customers and your focus segment. And this is where the fundamental difference of the exercise is, that this is not being done by your own imagination or by your own point of view. This is being done by actually working with the real world and interacting with groups of people and trying to find out. And this is what is also interesting about it, because while interacting with the users, customers, or your target segment groups, you get to know a lot more. And also, you must understand that any kind of innovation is not an outcome of just an intellectual exercise. The innovation happens through the process of discovery, and unless you discover something new and interesting, there is very little material that you can say that is worth addressing the challenge. So the whole notion of innovation is very different, because when we think about innovation, the pictures that come to our mind is sitting in one corner listening to music and really imagining something new. That's not how innovation happens. innovation really happens on the field when you get to know and understand more and more, and your understanding about something becomes wider and wider. So this is what the canvas prompts you to do, that you understand your customers well, you understand their needs, understand what is that which they are struggling with, understand what they would really like to have, and then you can have a useful value proposition which everybody will appreciate. I don't mind saying at this point of time that out of 10 ideas, new ideas that are launched into the market in terms of new products and services, 7 fail. And this is a global phenomenon. This is not just a local phenomenon. And why it happens is because of a poor understanding of the customer segment. People haven't really taken the pain. It is the boss or the manager or somebody sitting at the top who decides that this is how things need to be done. That may be true to that individual, but that doesn't mean it is true to everybody. And that's why it's very, very important to send your students, as well as if you are working on a professional assignment yourself, to go to the field and interact and really deeply listen and observe what is your customers are trying to do. This is again a very tricky situation because most often the questionnaires that we are taught and trained to prepare are quite useless, because we tend to ask the most usual things and people reply with answers which they think you expect to hear. They don't really tell you the truth. So to be able to understand the real problems and real issues of people, you need to find a different kind of a strategy and a different approach to interact with people, and that doesn't really or necessarily happen just by talking. That may happen by following people, that may happen by watching people, observing people, asking them very indirect questions about what they really care and value in their life and things like that. Because if you just have a simple questionnaire, and that's how most of the businesses work, and that's how we are trained in our MBA programs, to make a questionnaire and get people to answer that. And there is a lot of difference between what people say and what people do. Yeah, so you need to understand that part and do your research really well. So this is how the uh, jobs, pains, and gains have been prioritized. And you must understand that any business proposition or value proposition cannot address each and everything. Somewhere you have to choose and make a choice about what is really your value proposition or business will try and address. Don't try and cover everything, because then it becomes overbearing, it doesn't remain practical. Also, people are not able to identify you as something that does a particular kind of thing well. So to be able to do that, you must choose actually the most significant and important things, probably two, three, and not more than that, in a certain, while visualizing a certain business or a value proposition. Now we move on to the other side of the value proposition canvas on the left hand side, which is the value map. And on the extreme left, then there is list of product and services, which is simply that to be able to address what your customers are trying to get done, which are jobs. What could be basic things that could actually address their concerns. So, in a case like taxi, and if you are trying to find a suitable alternative, and if you are familiar with the technology and the way technology is getting updated, a mobile app for passengers could be a possible idea. Also, getting a standard cab um, standard cab, in the sense that there is a standard kind of taxi that is available. Like you get micro, you get mini, you get luxury, you get all those kind of things. So list down all your products and services on the extreme left hand side, and then you come to the pains and try and see how the pains of the customers could actually be interestingly and appropriately addressed. So in this case, what we are looking for is probably an automatic payment, something like a 24 by 7 availability of the taxi service, to be able to predict the arrival time of the driver. And these are just features. So we are imagining a time when all these features did not exist. But what we are doing is trying to see that can there be a possible way by which the pain of the customer can be appropriately addressed. And it is also similarly mapped. So these are the pain, and they are called fundamentally pain relievers in this uh, value proposition canvas. And you move on to gains, where you're looking at gains in a manner that uh, 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 that results into a pleasant outcome for your customer. It could be a pleasant outcome in terms of what was not even expected. No, so something like that you are able to manage all your details from a single platform, that you are able to have a automatic payment, which means that there is a bank uh, uh, offered by the app, where you put in money and each time you travel, your amount is deducted from that. And also that you are able to navigate your ride, in the sense that you are able to change directions, you are able to take the most fastest route and not probably the most economical route, that you are able to change your destination. So these are things which could be uh, termed as gains, and how gains are being created, you have to think of those options. Similarly, the way the prioritization has been done in terms of customer profile, a similar prioritization needs to be done with the value mapping as well. So basically, as I said earlier, that what you are choosing is the most important and significant issues to be addressed through your value proposition, and not trying to address everything that is there as a pain, gain, and the real need of the customer. So you rank them in terms of priority and then choose the most important ones which should be addressed. So this is what a ranked value proposition canvas would look like, where you have prioritized the customer profile features, the jobs, pains and gains, and similarly you have gone to the value map, where you have tried to prioritize and put into some kind of an order the list of product and services, the pain relievers and the gain creators. And then you try and match them, you try and bring a fit between the customer profile and the uh, uh, value mapping, where each one of the aspect is appropriately addressed or not. This is actually not such a difficult exercise, and once you try and engage or try and practice this with any kind of possible assignment. Like, say for example, you can choose any kind of concern that you may have, whether it is personal or professional or related to your students' work, and try and map this whole thing out. It I can promise you that this is a very interesting way of doing things. So you try and match and bring a fit between all the three aspects. The jobs are uh, uh, aligned with the list of product and services. The pains are aligned with pain relievers, and the gains are aligned with gain creators in the value. And then next thing is that once you have an idea which is a little more clearer now, you try and verify it. So in the process you may have made certain assumptions that this is how you think that you would be addressing the pain of your customers, and this is the manner in which you will actually do it. So what you can do is actually go to the customers and give them an idea, this is what you are thinking of doing, and get a feedback. The customer can tell you or give you kind of an observation and comment whether they will like this particular way or they won't like this particular way. You can get feedback. After getting the feedback, you can come back and re-rationalize or reappropriate all your offerings, and this is how a value proposition is really created. So ultimately what you're trying to do is to bring a good fit between your value map and your customer profile. So please try this out. Try this out on your own and try this out with a simple example. As I said, that this could be tried out just with the service of delivering milk at your doorsteps. Try and run this in your own mind and in your own way. What is that which you are trying to really get done? What are the pains that you are having currently while getting the milk delivered at your home, and what you would really like to have once you get that work done, getting the milk? What is that? Because everything is not an end in itself. This is only, I mean, things which we are trying to do. It is leading to a certain outcome or an end result, and you have to try and question what really is that end result and be sensitive to that. You have to try and identify that, because most often we get caught into the means. Like, say for example, if you take a fan, the fan is only a means to provide you breeze or air. But what happens is that we get caught into so much about detailing the fan that it seems to be the end in itself. And then in the process, what we may be doing is actually mindless and quite useless things. And you will see this all around. Something like, if you take an example of a car, what is the result that you want from the car is what is important, and things have to be seen from that perspective. We get caught into the car, and so much so that our attention is probably going into unnecessary things. The outcome of a car is mobility. And if you look at mobility, the outcome of what a car provides, there could be several options. The moment you are caught and your attention is only on the car, you are only thinking of the car and you have lost why you are doing it. And many of us, I can assure you, have experienced this in our life with, say for example, education, where good education, we get caught into just the education part, which is to get maybe better marks and be appreciated by our peers and by our teachers and by our parents, and probably get a certificate and things like that. But what is that which the education is preparing you for? In the process we forget. So it is a very important lesson to continue to uh, focus your attention on the outcome of things rather than on the means of things. And this is how a value proposition canvas becomes important and useful in terms of getting your attention onto the real things which are required. So, again, I would like to tell you that there is a lot of material that is available on the internet on business model canvas and on value proposition canvas. And together with that, there are some very interesting books that are there. And I'm sure uh, if you are interested, you would have no limitation of finding more and more material. I will try and also share a few links uh, on the subject which you can directly go to and probably get more material and contents for these two concepts that we have discussed today. I hope that this session has been somewhat useful. Please pardon me for the fact that I'm not still used to this whole uh, uh, way of addressing people, which is right now talking to myself and recording a talk uh, and then expecting people to hear it. I'm a very hands-on and and tangible kind of a person, and it has been very difficult for me, which I'm still getting used to talking to myself. So, if there has been any inclarity in my communication, please pardon that, and I will leave my number and my contact where you can get in touch with me later on and we can have a discussion about something specific. I'll be very happy to do that with any one of you, and please don't hesitate in contacting me if it is required. Thank you very much.